calls me Tam.
All right. Well, everybody, welcome Tam to the original digital interview series. You are an OD. You've been around this business almost probably you and I are about the same amount of time, which we won't tell anybody our age. But can you give a little introduction? Just tell everybody about yourself for those who don't know you, the three or four people who don't know you.
Yeah, so I'm Tam Alesi, and I have been doing this for quite some time. No, I am a media person through and through, and I started early days at McCann Erickson as an assistant media planner, and have had the blessing of a career where I've just gotten to work on. I've been able to work, excuse me, end of day Friday on a just like long line of amazing brands from Nestle to Universal Pictures to Apple, as you know,
Yeah.
HP, L'Oreal, like just really amazing brands,
Yeah.
which have created an amazing experience to learn from and thrive from and grow from. And now I'm CEO of Mediaplus, which is the largest independent agency in Europe. And 2 years ago, they gave me the keys to the castle, and we launched Media Plus actually in North America from scratch. So we are coming up on the end of our second fiscal year, and doing quite well and having a good time.
Congrats on all that. I've been watching the successes. I keep hearing more and more about Media Plus as of late. So you're doing something very, very well.
Thank you. We're officially award-winning agency. We won two
Okay.
awards with Digiday. Best Agency Partner, which we can talk a little bit about that and like why that's really special. And then we won Best Omnichannel Campaign for our clients Pantalones Tequila,
Okay.
which is owned by the McConaughey's down there by you in Texas.
Yeah.
And really proud of that one in particular because it was a very, what I like to say, modest investment for the launch. So we did a lot with a little, and
Mhm.
they had an amazing launch period, and so it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a good billboard that I drive past relatively regularly, which I see, which is pretty funny. So
Yes, they have no pants on. I love that that's still up. And the creative coming up this year is beyond amazing.
cool.
Yeah, so lots of goodness to come.
All right. Well, one of the things I want to talk about with you, you've been in the space for a while. You've done a really great job navigating all these wonderful brands over the years. And those are the brands that everybody else kind of looks at and says they're innovative. They do some interesting things. You kind of lean in on innovative, interesting things, and you always have. So, talk a little bit about how you do that, how you approach that. How do you identify the people in the brands who are going to be good partners for you to go and pursue some of these more innovative ideas? Because it's not always easy to push these through.
No, it's not. And Corey, we have been doing this for a long time as digital OGs, and we can go back to our times where we just had to prove that digital had to be on the plan. And
Oh,
how many
yes, I remember those.
presentations do we do for that? I think one thing that's really important to Jazz and I for the agency is that we everything starts with understanding. And obviously the consumer is at the center of that. And when we talk about media, we don't start by talking about tactics or cool things. We actually start with behaviors. And that's because, behaviors like media tactics change clearly. Like think about how you watch. It's no longer linear TV versus digital video. It's are you watching on your, linear screen, but hey, the consumer doesn't realize is that linear or is that CTV? Or are they watching YouTube on the big screen? Or are they watching a video on their phone? Like how I think consumers consume, changes all the time, to
Hmm.
your point, but behaviors don't. So we actually start, which I think makes our conversations quite easy with how we connect with consumer behaviors. So where they're watching, where they're reading, where they're swiping, like where they walk. And when we start with a behavioral notion as like the key like focus, then bringing forth innovative media is actually quite easy,
Hmm.
because it's about, inspiring an action, whether that's a sale, whether that's, a share, whatever it might be, via the behavior versus, thinking about it, oh, this percentage of my budget has to go to TV, and this percentage has to go to out of home, and this percentage has to go to digital. So it really does make our conversations quite easy. Um, my partner in crime, Jasmine, who's our chief strategy officer, she is, besides the fact she's brilliant, she really takes a data-led approach to everything we do as well. So I feel like between the thorough understanding and the kind of data-led approach to all things in media, it actually makes innovation an easy conversation when it comes to how we deliver great work. And so it gives us permission to really push boundaries and
Mhm.
focus on creative media versus just impressions.
There's an interesting thing in there that I kind of want to double down on though, because I agree with everything you said, and I, wholeheartedly buy off on that too. What's interesting is when you talk about how you say that consumer behavior doesn't change all that much, and yet we know that it is evolving, right? They are
Yeah.
looking at different screens, they're looking at different platforms, they're looking at different types of content. And the location and the context for how they're doing that does change over time, which has an impact on whether or not you can use it for a marketing purpose. And that coupled with the fact that a lot of these innovative media formats, innovative technologies, et cetera, they don't have a whole lot of data behind them to be able to prove their ability to deliver an audience that meets the behaviors of that audience. So is there a point in time in which you have to even tell the
Nope.
clients that there's a little bit of a gut instinct here
Sorry.
that you have to follow?
My
That's
dog
okay.
just
Dogs
barked.
do this all day.
Ugh.
But is there a point at which the data just isn't strong enough, but you still know it's the right thing to do to push that innovative concept, and then the clients have to just kind of go with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes there's not data that says like this is the right thing to do.
Yeah,
And I'll give you an example. So DeLonghi is a partner of ours. If you don't know who DeLonghi is, they make the most amazing coffee and espresso machines on the planet.
sure.
Plug. Um, I'm addicted to my coffee machine. I have 3 cappuccinos a day. And we had a big challenge for them because frankly, coming out of COVID, where everybody was buying machines for their home, just like a lot of other categories, they started to see a slow. And it wasn't just DeLonghi, it was ultimately the category. So we had to come up with an approach that not only allowed us to meet business plan, but overachieve it in a time because we started with them where we were delivering their first Q4 campaign with us in a time where everybody else is obviously double clicking into in terms of investment and
Yep.
attention and all those good things. So we went to them with a strategy that I think it worked, and the data wouldn't have necessarily told us to do this. Really thinking about kind of how we attack the virtual shelf because DeLonghi, only a small percentage of their coffee machines get sold on DeLonghi.com. Most of them get sold by the resellers like Williams Sonoma, Crate and
Mhm.
Barrel, whoever it might be. So we actually came up with a program that did have, by the way, linear TV, but we were working through Simul and actually using data cues to ensure that we weren't just reaching everybody on linear. We were actually reaching coffee consumers. We used out of home within like the facets of the actual like retail stores, and then we used tech. We used in market to not only retarget consumers that had literally walked by our boards and the stores, but that also had triggers in terms of the audiences we had set up with TV and other marketing. And what it did is like, first of all, we didn't have proof that that was the right approach, like, because we didn't have a big set of data points saying, yes, you should do this.
Mhm.
Um, but because we know like frequency matters, and we had to be thoughtful about it, we really, I think we were able to strategize with DeLonghi in a way that they knew it would be right because it did a couple of things. One, it allowed for them to stand out in their competitive set. And we obviously had beautiful creative with Brad Pitt, like the face of Brad Pitt on the creative, as well as our beautiful machines. But it allowed us to have that functional frequency. It allowed us to connect with consumers in the store when they were going in and out, where their competition actually spends a lot of their dollars actual in retail,
Hmm.
which you can't measure that.
Hmm.
So we had to like be really clever about how we were surrounding the consumer in a way that really pulled them in. And the best part about it, at the end of the campaign, the data actually showed that that frequenced approach not only worked, but it actually helped De'Longhi deliver their biggest Q4 ever.
Nice.
Um, and it also supported their retail strategy, because their retailers saw how much that like it seemed like we had spent a lot more than we did because of the way that we were represented and the way that we were present.
Hmm.
It enabled them to secure more shelf space. It enabled them to get additional information and ways to connect with consumers. So we really, I think there wasn't like a data stream that told us this is the playbook.
Hmm.
But we had to be a challenger brand. Even though like I don't necessarily consider DeLonghi a challenger brand per
Yeah.
se, because we had to make our, modest budget seem much bigger than it was so that we could um, really compete with the competition in a different way. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, it does. There's two things that come out of it. I was just talking to a bunch of students the other day, and typically I do a lot of B2B stuff. And we're talking about account-based marketing. Account-based marketing is it's a necessary requirement to be a B2B marketer now. But I also argue that what you just did was essentially account-based marketing, but you identified the accounts as a subsegment of an audience that specifically are, high income, probably coffee lovers, and you surrounded them in the same way that a B2B marketer would do with ABM. And that strategy is very effective.
yeah, you are spot on.
Yeah.
And now we have the data, by the way, that shows that works. So we've been able to double down. And when we launched, they had a new coffee innovation come out that was more about coffee than it was espresso.
Yeah.
And it was still bean to cup. And we launched that, and we have not been able to keep that machine on the shelf since launch.
It's a good problem.
And it's a great problem to have sometimes, most times. But we were able to like literally double down on that strategy and then go a little bit bigger because we had learnings to then justify it. So
Yeah.
you know, I think the lesson for our partners, because we share these stories with all of our partners, is have some confidence that you should always leave yourself open to test, media opportunities that might not be proven,
Yeah.
so that you can give yourself room to not only stand out in a different way, but you can also break through the clutter, excuse me, you can win the consumer, but you can also win your B2B audience, which with the virtual shelf as it is today is super important. Those customers
Yeah.
mean so much.
Now that concept, like you said, that there's a lot of innovations in that concept. Just out of curiosity, how long did it take to sell that concept through?
Um, it wasn't a long runway.
No? Okay.
No, I mean, I go back to the point I had earlier where we start everything with like a real thorough understanding.
Mhm.
And, DeLonghi was able to see really quickly like how well we understood them and how well we understood the consumer. And it gave them the confidence in the approach.
Cool.
So there's others that the runway is longer, but in general, we always feel like with all of our partners, if we start with understanding so that they see that we see the world through their lens,
Mhm.
then it enables us their confidence so that we can deliver that type of a program.
There's another interesting element to that. And it's probably how I would hypothesize it's how you sell stuff through, how you teach your teams to sell stuff through. When you and I got started, nobody had done the stuff that we were doing. The medium didn't exist. So there was no backstop to lean against to say, oh, this has worked or this hasn't worked in the past. So I think that taught you, I know it taught me that you had to go with the data you had to prove it. You were willing to stand up and prove the value, but you were also willing to take some chances and test stuff. Do you think that makes it easier? Do you think teaching your teams makes it easier to think from that point of view versus always go back and look historical data? Like we didn't have historical data, but now there's a lot of historical data. Is
Yeah.
that a mindset you can teach the teams that you work with and the people that you hire?
Um, so it's a great question. I think as a CEO of my own agency now, like talent is front and center
Yeah.
and the type of people we hire, in particular for us as like as a growing agency who we are, we're a boutique with, the power of scale through the group, but in North America, across the US with us and our creative partner, we're 110. From a media perspective, there's 40 of us. So we're small.
Mhm.
So every single person that walks in the door has an incremental effect on our culture. And so, uh, you know, I think part of our approach is one, making sure that the folks that join we always talk about getting on the bus, the team that we have, like, come on the bus, that there's four attributes that they really scream loudly.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Curiosity is ultimately like number one.
Okay.
Um, that they're very human, so that they're like thinking about how to like be connecting with you, with customers, with our clients, like everybody, like as whole people, because it
Yeah.
like, allows us to be more strategic, connected. Because by the way, like a consumer doesn't understand when they've seen a TV ad or they've seen a print ad or they've seen an out of home ad. I can't believe I just used print as an example. That like that, those are different things and like where they saw the message. So we have to have a connected system. And then our last, which is most fun in terms of a person, is the unbound.
Mhm.
Um, and that is a willingness to think differently and to realize that every solution isn't something that's necessarily been proven.
Mhm.
Um, and, so one, like super important that people that we're bringing onto the bus, like have that mindset as a human. Um, but two, like I sit with the team, Corey, like Jasmine and I, like our whole leadership team is like intermingled,
I'm
not all
sure.
together, but like with our team. And we have conversations in front of them that like our bosses early days, there's no effing way they would have done that.
No.
Like I remember when I started at McCann, like, you know, the leadership, they all sat in offices and in the morning and they'd be like, Tam, here's your to-do. And at 5 p.m. they'd be like, okay, you can go. Like literally, it was
Yeah.
like there was barely any interaction. I think that like us sitting with the teams and allowing them to overhear our conversations and share stories gives them the confidence to think about how they converse and collaborate with our partners in a different way that doesn't I hate I know that sales is part of what we do, but it's not about selling in an idea. It's about collaborating an idea to the plan
Mhm.
because it makes the most sense for the brand. And a we all what we talk about at Media Plus is the fact like we're growth partners. Like we're not just media planners and buyers. Like if a client calls me a vendor, like I'm not the
You're doing
right
something wrong. Yeah.
partner for them, right? I want them to think of like us as like one team, one dream, which makes all of that in my mind so much, it just makes everything easier
Yeah.
because like we're living it with them, we're living their brand, we're living like what's important to them. We're focused on their growth. We know what their business goals are. We know like if they're publicly traded, we know what they've promised the street from a forecast perspective. And then we think about how to build a connected system that delivers on that. And so, to go back to your question, like, can we teach that to a team? I think we can, but I think it's because we take a very personal approach that allows them to see everything in action.
Mhm.
And if they're struggling with something, like we get involved
Yeah.
and not because, we don't trust them to do it, but because there's things that you and I learned and that Jasmine learned and Laura learned and Jen learned as we were growing up in this business, that enables them to be better at what they do.
Yeah.
So
I think I
sorry,
get that. And I
that
get
was
that.
a
It's
long
actually,
answer.
no, it's a great answer because what's funny is that I clearly remember our bosses at our current age.
Yeah.
And I feel like we are very radically different than our bosses were at that same step of their career. And I can't necessarily put into words why, but you said from a cultural perspective, from an approach perspective, and my POV that we were trained that the way it was done before, if there was a way it was done before, may not be applicable to how we want to do it going forward. I think that creates a very different environment, and that environment can be very successful. But, and this is the big but, a lot of people, as they go up the chain of command, get further and further detached from that and they forget. And it sounds like you and Jasmine and the team around you haven't forgotten. You actually are keeping it very close to heart. And that makes for a better environment overall. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. I think so. My BHAG, like my big, hairy, ambitious goal. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sasha Savick, for putting that in my head. Um, is I just want to be the agency partner that everybody loves to work with.
Yeah.
It's really that simple. And that's first and foremost our talent. So if they don't feel like they're learning, then we failed.
Yeah.
Um, our partners, as well as the publishing community. And, because we can't, like, that's the trifecta that makes our little world go round. And
Hmm.
I think where the big guys are failing is they are not teaching their current talent that those three things together are super important.
Yeah. They are.
Um, and, Corey, I was on a call. Um, no, I actually had somebody in the office and they had told me they were on a call where it was for like something with the IAB or the 4As, or I don't remember what it was. And somebody from one of the larger companies, like they're like, oh yeah, we're back in the office now 2 or 3 days a week. I don't remember what it was. And the person's like, oh great, like we'd love to set up time for our team to come in. And so we can have some one-on-one time. And the guy's like, nope, you can meet with us over Zoom. And if I would have heard that and I was that person's boss, I would have fucking fired him. And
Yeah.
I would have, because we literally can't do our job without our publishing community. And if
Yeah.
we're not able to make the time to be together and to like know each other again as people
Mhm.
and like trust each other, then what are we doing in this amazing business? Like
I
I, so
agree.
I have all these allergies. That's one of my allergies, but
No, it's a good one. And it's funny because you and I are sitting here talking. We did get to finally run into each other again in the fall for the first time in many years.
yeah,
But this is a relationship that you and I have known each other for, I'm not going to count the number of years, but it's over a two with a zero.
I'm
And
forever 38, Corey. It doesn't matter.
but we've known each other for a long time. So there was a relationship built early that still follows us all the way through. So even if you don't see each other for a while, but when you do get a chance to connect, it's more powerful. It's better. It's just a better interaction. And these people who are only going to do Zoom calls, they're never going to know you that well. They're never going to know what actually gets you excited and gets you happy. And it's not going to be the best relationship that actually drives
And
business.
they're not going to succeed.
No,
And they're not going to succeed because like you can't learn through a screen.
no.
And we go to the office 3 days a week. If I really had my way, we'd be in four. But I do want to have understanding that we figured out a different way to work. And so
Yeah.
we literally have a little decklet that like helps our team understand like what they should be doing when they're in the office and what they should do
Oh,
when
that's
they're home.
cool.
Like helps them organize their day better. But the time together is invaluable. And it does allow us to do this better. And we have a beautiful space. And our partners love to come in. They come in and they just like work from our office for the day.
Nice.
And we don't even have any meetings planned. I mean, usually by the time we do, I mean, we have a full bar. You're gonna have to come in, Corey, and like
I'll be up there in a couple weeks.
have happy hour with us. Um, but it is like that connection is like what some people don't realize is actually the most important part of what we do.
Yeah,
And and
I
so I
agree.
get very passionate about it. Sorry.
I agree. No. Well, here's the deal. We are at time. I'm gonna take you up on that offer when I'm in New York next in a couple
Yes,
weeks. I'm gonna come and we'll
please.
taste some of that pantalones that you have there.
Yes, I love
But
it.
thank you for coming by and doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for
Uh,
having me.
I'll be seeing you in a bit.
Perfect.